Be it resolved that the United States Congress repeal Sections 206, 213, and 412 of the USA PATRIOT Act, making wiretapping, indefinite detentions, and covert entry search warrants illegal. The USA PATRIOT Act, which stands for United in Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism Act, was signed into law on October 26, 2001 by President George W. Bush in response to the September 11th terrorist attacks. According to an article written by Vic Walter for usbillofrights.org, the Patriot Act is 342 pages and was rushed through Congress without all members reading it due to its complexity and the fact that Congress was not given adequate time to read it. This bill that was rushed through Congress, as me and my colleagues will show, essentially ripped the Constitution to shreds by violating the First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendments, as well as the overall privacy of the people. Section 206 of the Patriot Act greatly expands the horrific practice of wiretapping. Essentially, according to an article written by EEF titled, "Let It Sun on the Patriot Act," what this section allows people to do is eliminate the need for separate search warrants for every form of communication. In simpler terms, in the past, every time a search warrant for a wiretap was requested, it would only allow one device to be searched. Now, one warrant covers anything and any device that this person may have touched. This allows for a type of so-called rolling surveillance, which abuses the power of the law. This law, because of its broad terms, affects everyone, even if you are not the one being searched. Because if someone that is being searched does as much as come into contact with you or uses your device, you will be allowed to be searched. This, of course, violates the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which states, "The right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath of affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized." If your property is being searched when you are not even a suspect or do anything wrong, but just coming into contact with someone who has done something wrong, doesn't violate this important section of the Bill of Rights, I'm not sure which does. Section 412 of the Patriot Act allows for immigrants of our country to be detained and sent to prisons such as the famed Guantanamo Bay without being given due process of law. Indefinite detentions, as they're called, completely throw out the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which states, "No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crimes unless the presentment of the indictment of the grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when it actually serves in time of war, public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law." Now, many people argue this doesn't apply to terrorist subjects. Now, many people argue that because this only applies to terrorist subjects, it keeps the civil liberties of immigrants intact. However, the shady language of this law leads to the question of who rules these people terrorists. The law states that our federal government must have reasonable grounds to believe that these suspects are involved in terrorist activities. What is considered reasonable grounds? Who knows? Because of the vagueness of this law, the power is surely to be abused. According to the ACLU's article on Section 412, the Supreme Court ruling Zadividas v. David should also make this section illegal. Zadividas v. Davis states that indefinite detentions cause a serious constitutional problem. This ruling did not rule on terrorist suspects, but again, I ask, who rules them to be a terrorist? Another point that people who disagree with this argument will make is that the Fifth Amendment does not pertain to non-citizens. This absurd claim can be disregarded by simply looking at the language of the Fifth Amendment, which clearly states at the beginning, "No person, not citizen." Indefinite detentions lead to a slippery slope. If you don't trust me, I ask you to research the NDAA, or National Defense Authorization Act, which allows this practice to be executed on American citizens. The Constitution and Bill of Rights were written for one reason and one reason only, to restrict the federal government from violating the natural-born rights of the people. Societies haven't come and gone because of their willingness to throw away these rights, because they felt there's only a minor price to pay for security. One of our most famous founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, said, according to RenewAmerica.org's Robert Mayer, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." This exact statement was made time and time again by our founders, including Jefferson. Just ask yourself the question that our founding fathers did. Would you rather be safe or free or safe under tyrannical rule? If you choose the latter, then you should support the Patriot Act. If you choose the first one, then you should get rid of this despicable breach of freedom.
The negative side rejects the proposal. Be it resolved that the United States Congress repeal sections 206, 213, and 412 of the USA Patriot Act. This acronym stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism. The Patriot Act was passed in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks in 2001, the most serious domestic terrorist attack ever to occur in our nation's history. Every American remembers that day, whether you were old enough to comprehend it at the time or not. 2,298 Americans were killed in the attacks carried out by 19 hijackers who were members of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda. The hijackers were foreign nationals who were citizens of another country but were legal residents in the United States. After 9/11, it was clear that our country needed to increase measures to obstruct terrorism and protect the American people. According to the article Patriot Act 2001 from Gale Opposing Viewpoints, the Patriot Act states its purpose as an act to deter and punish terrorist attacks in the United States and around the world, to enhance law enforcement investigatory tools. The Patriot Act is an essential addition to United States security to combat the devastating threat of terrorism. The Patriot Act updated existing security measures, making them more effective in the fight against terrorism. Privacy is an issue that is always brought up when discussing the Patriot Act. What is privacy? The Merriam-Webster definition of one's right to privacy is freedom from unauthorized intrusion. As you will learn from our side's argument, the Patriot Act in no way causes an unauthorized violation of privacy of any law-abiding American citizen. Extreme precautions are taken from overseeing courts to make sure the sections of the Patriot Act we are discussing are not carried out in such a way that there is an abuse of power or an intrusion of privacy. The only people being harmed from the laws of the Patriot Act are those who pose a terrorist threat. Section 213 of the USA Patriot Act allows for the delayed notice of search warrants. According to an article from National Public Radio, The Patriot Act, Key Controversies by Larry Abramson and Maria Godoy, Section 213 lets law enforcement authorities search a home or business without immediately notifying the target. But there must be a legitimate reason for the delayed warrant, and the target must eventually be notified of the search. The United States Justice Department said that this section of the Patriot Act has allowed drug busts and other investigations to be successfully completed without being compromised because of notifying the target of the search. The notification of a search warrant to the target could result in the destruction of evidence, escape from prosecution, or intimidation of witnesses. This section of the Patriot Act is not a violation of privacy. Court authorization is required in order for law enforcement to make a search with a delayed warrant. The use of delayed notification warrants is a tool that has been used in law enforcement for decades, according to an article by the United States Justice Department, the USA Patriot Act, Myth vs. Reality. Section 213 simply created a uniform standard for the procedures that did not exist before, since the lack of uniformity caused problems in complicated terrorism cases. Opponents of the Patriot Act argue that the Fourth Amendment, protecting Americans' privacy from random search and seizure, is violated in this section of the Patriot Act. Actually, the Supreme Court has ruled in multiple cases that the Fourth Amendment does not require immediate notice of a search warrant. The court said, officers need not announce their purpose before conducting an otherwise duly authorized search if such an announcement would provoke the escape of the suspect or the destruction of critical evidence. Section 213 of the Patriot Act has been used successfully to combat terrorism. In a recent case, United States v. Oda, a court issued a delayed warrant in order for law enforcement to search for an envelope that had been mailed to the target of an investigation. The search was successful and confirmed that the target was operating a money exchange connected to a member of Jihad. The warrant let investigators conduct the search without compromising a wiretap of the target and several others associated with him. The target was later notified of the search warrant and charged. Successes like this are why it is critical to keep the Patriot Act laws. Section 412 of the USA Patriot Act requires the mandatory detention of aliens in the United States who are suspected terrorists and threats to national security. It is similar to holding a criminal without bail. With involved judicial supervision, Section 412 allows the government to detain foreign terrorists until they are removed from the country. This section of the Patriot Act protects innocent Americans from a possible terrorist being released to live among them and cause harm. The detention of suspected terrorist aliens is not indefinite. Their detention lasts only as long as it takes them to remove them from the country. In order for an alien to be detained under Section 412, according to the United States Department of Justice, there must be reasonable grounds to believe that the alien entered the United States to violate espionage or sabotage laws, entered to oppose the government by force, engaged in terrorist activity, or endangered the United States national security. The proceedings of Section 412 of the Patriot Act are carried out by the Attorney General. After he has taken a certified alien suspected of terrorism into custody, he has 1 week to file criminal charges against the alien. If he has not done this, the alien must be released from custody. This section of the Patriot Act does not challenge any person's rights. Aliens detained under Section 412 have the right to challenge their detention in court and file for habeas corpus. Along with other sections of the Patriot Act, 412 uses considerable court supervision to ensure no abuse of power is being carried out. Section 412 allows the U.S. government to take suspected alien terrorists off the streets where they could potentially harm innocent Americans and our national security. Our side strongly believes in the Patriot Act. Prior to its passing, law enforcement were often restricted from taking more direct and immediate action to prevent possible terrorist attacks or from tracking terrorist activity within the United States. The Patriot Act also revised outdated laws that did not accommodate the technological advancement of terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda. Our opponents claim that the Patriot Act has the potential to violate the right to privacy. As I have explained, the Patriot Act has plenty of measures preventing this. The USA Patriot Act is an essential piece of legislation to protect our great nation from the ever-present threat of terrorism.